This is Aj McGinty, and you're listening to Bears Beyond the Gate. Enjoy.
And he's going to score Bristol's third try.
What
Great play by Augustine Pichot.
And Bristol have made a bit of history, winning the European Challenge Cup for the first time ever.
And Bristol have won. They won the local derby.
You're listening to Bears Beyond the Gate, a Bristol Bears podcast made by fans for fans, with 2.5 season card holders at Ashton Gate who love the club, the game and all things Bears. I'm Pete and I'm joined by Miles, Lee and controversially still the Christmas tree. And Lee, it's gone past 12th night. You know that's bad luck.
Yeah, but in Withywood we don't like to count, so we can't go past maybe count. 9 or 10, so I'm safe, Pete.
And to be fair, I mean, there is an argument to say if you just keep it up all year, you can all you got to do is turn the lights off, and then when you get to November, just turn the lights on again.
Funny you should say that, because see the little decoration there that I've done, the little Christmas tree in the snow spray. That was done last Christmas.
Is it permanent?
And it's still there now.
That is good. Well, it's efficiency. I mean, cost of living crisis and all that sort of thing.
Got to be cost effective.
But anyway, so Christmas tree is still with us. But boys, I mean, if the Christmas tree could talk...
Oh God, yeah. Well, let Miles explain this.
Well, hang on a minute. I had a bit of a grievance against the Christmas tree still being here when I first came in Lee's pad and tried to push the thing over and kill it. And, and the looks I got from Lee, you should have seen it.
We should say
it's still standing.
This is a family heirloom. My dearest mother, before she passed away, gave me this tree, and Miles is racking it around my lounge.
You added the snow spray, did you?
Yeah, just a little bit, mate.
Well, anyway, come on. It's not a podcast about Christmas trees, is it?
Or slating me.
No. But more importantly, I think this is a podcast about baking humble pie, isn't it, lads? Because what a difference a week makes.
Yes.
I mean, this is also unprecedented. This is the second midweek pod we've done in a row in the history of our podcast. Again, a bit like the bins, they never get back into routine after Christmas.
Still not, no.
And we are the same. So we couldn't do it on Sunday. We couldn't do it last night for various reasons. So this was the first night we could do it. So last week... we did get a bit deep and a bit doom-laden last week. We got on a bit of a rant, but I think rightly so, because although I wasn't there, I was listening to it on the radio. Did I mention I went to Australia over Christmas?
Once or twice.
Yeah, but it was a pretty dire night at the Gate, and I think whilst in hindsight, both the Post article and our podcast was fairly dark, I think we did get quite a lot of feedback from people that seemed to kind of agree with us as well. But I think we did it in a fairly balanced negative way.
I think we did, and to be honest, last week I think there was a lot of people a lot darker than we were. So
I think so.
I think we did. But the thing is, that's we every week we express our feelings, and last week we were feeling pretty rubbish, weren't we, after the Chiefs game with good reason. And this week we're feeling amazing. I think collectively we're all happy to eat humble pie.
Yeah.
And after that performance itself.
It is a pleasure. I mean, I re-listened to the podcast walking to work this week and then realised really how negative I was about the Chiefs game. But then, there was a caveat at the end, wasn't there? That we love the club, love what they do, and we will pat them on the back when things go right. And I'm sure this week we will.
And as some of our hardcore Twitter followers will know, that I did actually tweet out a soundbite over the weekend where I had said, I just know what they're going to do is they're going to come back and bite us and make us look stupid and then go and win at Sale.
We did say
and we'll
that,
have to eat humble pie. So we kind of predicted it, didn't we?
Yeah.
And actually, what I like to think is that we made that happen.
Well, it was interesting, wasn't it? Because we listened to Pat Lam talk after the Sale game, and he was saying about Chiefs and how he was very desperately unhappy at the end of that game, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And it was nice for him to come out and give us that bit of honesty, and because I think we were all feeling the same, and part of my kind of thought process on the Post article last week after Chiefs was just give us a bit of honesty. And I think that was the thing. He came out and he said, look, we were really upset after the Chiefs game, and that's what I wanted. I just wanted a little bit of honesty and just say, look, we got it wrong. Collectively we got it wrong. It wasn't just the players, it was the management as well, because we didn't we didn't implement the game plan, and that was nice to hear, and I fully respect that, and I appreciate the honesty that he gave us.
I mean, he didn't quite go far as saying that he was in the wrong. He just said, I was bitterly disappointed. Now, you could argue he didn't quite clarify who he was bitterly disappointed with. Either he was bitterly disappointed with himself, or he was bitterly disappointed with the players for not doing as he told them. Or he said, I was a bit annoyed, and I think they cut out because I picked up the Post on Monday morning.
He was really disappointed with Lee's article.
I know, and I think the
Post,
reason... I mean, I know you've turned your phone off all week, Lee, haven't you? So I do wonder whether the reason Pat had to say this live on TNT, because it was the only way that he could get the message across to you, that he was very disappointed about what had happened, and he wanted to get that to you. But anyway, joking aside...
We should clarify that I've since done a this week's Post article, didn't I?
You did.
And I think, again, it was praising the team, but it was the caveat was still, and we're still using that word, I know.
And you even wrote it in the Post. It's been published, that word, hasn't it?
Yes.
And I think for once it's allowed.
Yes, thank you. And it was basically saying that as great a performance as it was, as fantastic a win, that's a Cell unbeaten at home 15 months, right? And I mean, that's full credit to the way we played and performed. But, and there is still a but in there for me, we need to do that consistently now. This can't be a one-off. We can't once every 6 weeks applaud the team and then, the other 5 weeks be full of dread and woe and, just feel dismal again. So let's as great as that was, let's keep it going now. And we're not going to win every game, like I said, but at least let's give it a go. Let's get that game plan back into fruition again.
Well, I think nicely said, Leo. I mean, that's why we're here. This is why we set this pod up, to talk about stuff like this and try and figure out how we feel about stuff, try and analyse it best we can, and then talk about the next one. But what I thought I'd do, because I thought, we got back into the swing of things, I sent out another request for short, sharp summaries, but this time, on Twitter I should say, but this time I tried to keep it quite specific, and I said, I've got 3 questions for people. What was the difference between the two games? Yeah. Why does the system work one week and not another? Yeah. And then, is this a turning point? Which, is a bit of a general one. So I thought, I've realised we've got a few regulars.
Yeah. And we love the feedback.
Yeah, and I'm not going to read theirs out because we've done it before, but the Hambley brothers, are they brothers or cousins?
Brothers, I think, yeah.
They're now trying to outdo themselves in the style of bullet pointing that they do.
With each other.
Yeah, so if you want to read what they've done, just go and find that My Short Sharp Summaries tweet and you can read their replies. But I should say thank you to them for getting involved, and what they say is very good. But we did have a couple of newbies and a couple of returners that haven't been read out before, and I'm all for inclusivity as best I can.
Absolutely.
So my first one I'm going to read out was Mr. Daniel Ronnie, and actually when I look at his Twitter feed, he's a drama teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, and I thought, well, he's a fellow.
Are you going to do it in a dramatic voice?
No, I'd be fascinated to know. It's quite funny when you see people.
What you should do is reply in a Shakespearean sort of.
You do start wondering what these people's lives are. What they do for a living. So it's interesting. But anyway, Mr. Daniel Ronnie. I mean, I like the fact he's called Mr. Daniel Ronnie. Yeah. It's very formal, isn't it? I mean, I have this image of him wearing a kind of a mortarboard and whatever.
And I always love it when people have 2 Christian names as well.
Yeah, Daniel Ronnie, like George Michael. Yeah, the classic. Trying to think of some others. But,
let's not go there.
Let's not go there. That's another pod.
Yes.
Right. So anyway, Mr. Daniel Ronnie, drama teacher. The difference was Jimmy Williams. He was everywhere. He adds a kicking game at 12 and works so hard around the pitch. He has been missed massively in the centre this season. He's not a big name, but I hope Pat sees his worth after this game. Now,
good shout.
I also know I did actually pull him up on something because as a teacher,
grammar.
He wrote Jimmy Williams with a small J and a small W. So I replied saying I think he deserves capital letters, meaning just spell his name wrong. He replied Jimmy Williams with all capital letters, so he got the wrong thing. Anyway, Daniel, great comment, and I think that's probably something that a lot of fans will echo, and we may talk about that in a minute. Okay, second person. Richard Morse. I think we've had Richard Morse on before.
Yeah.
But again, his quick comment was, his short, sharp summary was Josh Caulfield. He then he's bigging up Josh Caulfield, and then he says a proper abrasive lump, which is a bit disrespectful. But a proper abrasive lump of aggression in the second row. Old school power and bulk. Jimmy Williams and BJVR, a superb combo. Max, Noah and Gabs, excellent. Everyone seemed, quote, up for it.
Yeah.
So I think some really good points there. But Josh Caulfield, I think he's been showing that a lot this season, and we've always said we need a big lump in a nice way to kind of counterbalance Joe Batley. Who else we got? We've got, I'll go past the Hambleys. We've got, I think I'll go to Alistair Stephen. He's sometimes quiet, and then he comes back in again, and he's the sort of bloke that I think he waits. When he says something, I listen. Do you know what I mean? He says something, it means
Before
something.
you're going to see he comes back like COVID.
Yeah.
That's not like the pupils at your school, though, is it, Pete?
No, that's true. Yeah. Anyway, Alistair Stephen, he's the voice of reason. He's been around the block, I can tell this. He said, let's wait and see.
Yeah, okay.
Kind of saying what you said a little bit.
Yeah.
Got all excited about what we did to Saints and Quins last season. Then a massive fizzle out to the end of another damp squib of the season. This week's difference, rucking and speed of ruck. So, voice of reason, he's right. We've been here before.
Yeah.
But he noticed, and I agree with him, we were winning the collisions, we were the ruck speed, and as soon as you get front foot ball, then you can unleash the back.
It was almost how I was expecting Sel to play against us.
Well, we'll talk about that.
But actually, linked to that, another sort of long-standing interactor of the pod, Mark Johnson, and I saw him say this on several forums, so I thought I'd better read this out. He said the offside line was penalised early on by the officials. This led to hesitation in the Sale rush defence. In the Chiefs game, they were standing next to our back line by the time the ball got there. We exploited it well and were really up for it. But for me, this was a major difference. Now, it makes a good point that we may come back to that. And then finally, a couple more. Two people that I don't think we've had before. We've got Matthew Addison, at Madison Photo. Ooh, that's good. Difference seemed to be the licence to play quickly and with ball in hand. Our centres got the ball, which they didn't get against Exeter, and ran hard lines into spaces. AJ at 10 makes a massive difference too.
Agreed.
Then we've got another Lee who's a Bristol City fan as well, so we've got a bit of crossover. He definitely kept it short and sharp. He said the biggest difference is easily having McGinty available. Changes how we play. Short and sharp, I like that.
Yeah, good.
I haven't got my glasses, but that looks like maybe for Mora, is it? I think in his profile. Oh no, it's Jet.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah, Jet Emmanuel Thomas, good boy.
And then finally, last one, Jane Hewson. I think we've had Jane before. Another very, very short, sharp summary. She says to my questions, honestly, don't know. She's honest, though.
She's
I've
honest.
always said to my students, don't be afraid if you don't know. Just ask the question, you'll learn something.
That sounds like Miles every week on the pod.
That's what we say to Miles, just keep persevering.
Ask the questions.
It will come. It will come eventually. But anyway, Jane says, honestly don't know, but then she says, it just felt like a more grittier performance with fire.
Yeah.
She put a fire emoji. So
I love it.
I think some good, short, sharp summaries from the fans there. And I think, plenty of things for us to talk about. But, boys, I almost forgot. Because it was an away game and we couldn't go,
No.
we had to deploy yet another secret spy.
Or assassins.
And it was our big mate, Simon Stoner.
Yes.
And
It wasn't so secret.
well, Miles tweeted out, said, we've sent our secret spy with a pic, because he got on telly
He did.
waving the flag after our try just after half time. And Miles tweeted out our secret spy. And I mean, it wasn't that secret, was it? Because he's he'll say he's a big presence. And
He's
he had
a big unit.
He's a big unit. He had a big
flag and a big coat.
But anyway,
Yeah.
Simon very kindly also had been commissioned as yet another roving reporter. And he didn't do it, I think he had a few beers on that night, so he waited until Saturday and he sent us through this report, which we'll listen to now.
Hello there, Bears Beyond the Gate. Thanks for your message. And here's a little bit of a review from my point of view. First of all, I don't think I was much of a good spy behind enemy lines. From what I've got on my phone, I seem to have been seen. There you go. Review of the game then. So it was a gritty affair. Both teams setting their stall out, it seemed to be by defence. And I would credit Bristol Bears for their defensive outlook with some of their big powerhouses that Sale Sharks had. Although they didn't have everybody there, I think the team held out well. And I was celebrating some of the defensive moves. And, I think some of the pressure and mistakes made by Sale Sharks were brought upon our defence. Also, some of the substitutes that came on when towards the end of the game, they also stood firm and held out for a gritty win. So fair play to the Bears. On the negatives, on the day, I felt as if the game was being played the Bears' way. We're 14-0 up after a well-worked try by Randall and a bit of skill from a knockdown by Gabriel. I still feel as if we're playing outside the 20, trying to play out from the 22 when maybe we should clear our lines. That said, looking at it on the telly when I got home, it didn't look as much as that as when you're in the stands. Negatives, really, I think some of the kicking was pretty bad, but that can be shown from both sides. So like Gabriel's try was from some loose kicking. And we also got Harry Randall's, although he was injured with some sort of rib or back problem. Again, he got knocked down, charged down, and Hill went over and scored. Also on the defence, we just got to talk about one of the try-saving tackles. There's still questionable whether it was Max Malins or it was Williams. Or it was Howard's. We don't know. Even when I watched it back on the telly, I wasn't sure. On the day, I thought it was Max Malins covering tackle, but still, some great defence work, and that's what should be celebrated from the game. Negatives, as I said, we got that kick in, and the Bears really still seem to be wanting to play the Bears' way out with the 22. When you're winning 14-0, I don't know if that's the right way to play the game, but I'm not a coach, and that's just my view as a fan. 3 players to note I thought did really well. First of all, the hooker, Gabriel, in for Harry Thacker as he's out on a HIA. If you look at the type of quality he was up against, so you got Luke Cowan-Dickey, soon to, or looking like to be picked in the England squad, and obviously we know him from years of Exeter. Quality unit. And also he was up against Creevy towards the end, the last 15, 20 minutes. Now, I'm not too sure where he came from. I'd have to check with my mate, Nessie, and because she's an expert when it comes to London Irish. But I'm pretty sure that's where Creevy came from, out of London Irish, and Argentinian, obviously, hooker. So he stood up well if you face those two sort of quality opponents. Another mention for James Williams in the middle. First centre, again, a star in waiting, handled himself really well. If you think about their 10, Dupreez and Whites, who both are, outstanding 10s and 12s. Again, I think he stood up well. And then a final nod would go to Marmion, who obviously came in much, much earlier than he would have planned. And again, he was strong, quick. I noticed he was the commentator said that his plays kept us going and the Bears kept on the front foot. So my review is a really gritty affair, one on defence, and that's quite big against one of the biggest defending teams in the league. A shock to get the away win. I was not expecting the away win. And I have to say, a team performance all round and an enjoyable night.
Okay, well, yet again, boys, it's quite embarrassing, isn't it, that all of these outside broadcast people that we get to do it do a better job than us.
Yeah. You mean they go to the games?
Yeah.
Do you know what? It was great though. We love Si, don't we?
I love it.
Brilliant,
Love it.
lad. I would have loved the drunken version though, as well. Because I think that would have, for authenticity, I thought the drunken Si would have been great. But nevertheless, we got the sober one, didn't we?
Yeah.
We did.
And he made some good points, and it's always interesting to have someone at the game. It's a bit like when we go to home games and then we try and remember what we've seen. You often, certain things stick in your mind, don't you? And because you can't retain everything. Whereas when you watch it on telly and you've got the ability to pause it and think about it, you do see the game differently. So it's really, really good to get Simon's one. And I think that a couple of things that I thought was quite interesting was that, you know, he didn't think our kicking game was that good. He felt there was quite a lot of kicking, but we were just better than them. He mentioned the defence being absolutely solid, but then he said basically everyone played well, but I think he picked up on 3 players that he... and I wrote this down and I've not brought my notebook.
Malin's...
No, it wasn't. It was 3... He said it was first person he picked was Ogre.
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Because he said, you know...
Gabriel.
That was
he was against.
injured, so we had to step up. Now, we've had a little bit of a worry that Ogre's defence hasn't been that good. I mean, in a few games he's looked a little bit weak in the tackle, albeit very good in attack, and it seems like an excellent thrower. He had a very good game against Karabicki. He also mentioned Marmion, which was good, and then he also mentioned someone else, and I can't.
Caulfield as well.
Yeah, he did.
Josh Caulfield.
Yeah. So, and in fact, I think it wasn't, but we'll come back to it. So, anyway, a lot of things from all of our fans about the game. I mean, we've watched it on TV. Let's just have a little round table what we thought. I mean, anything that we've got no particular structure on this, so let's start with you, Miles. I mean, what's the first thing to come to mind? What do you want to talk about this game? What is it? Performances? Was it the tactics? What did you like?
Well, I don't know. Well, we know that tactics against Sale in the past have failed, haven't they? Season after season after season, going up to Manchester, and it's been a really difficult hunting ground. So
it's not been a happy hunting
ground. Well, not
happy
hunting ground. No, we've come away absolutely. But I'm so proud of what they did on Friday night. And you're right, I cannot explain the difference in 1 week, the style against Exeter, and another week against Sale. The team sheet was a bit different, and you could argue there were some key changes in key positions that just gave us the front foot. I mean, we talked about... why did I say that? Sorry. But we did. The centre partnership. I think a lot of fans have been cock-a-hoop about the change in the centre partnership on Friday night. And it just worked. It clicked. We had McGinty, Williams and Van Rensburg. Everything worked well. They were talking to each other brilliantly the whole match. And maybe that's all we needed. We had that same partnership, the first game of the season against Leicester, didn't we?
Yeah.
Subsequently, we had an injury to McGinty. Williams played in different positions, and that worked. And on a Friday night, they clicked, and something was phenomenal about that centre partnership, and that just put us on the front foot.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because after the match, Pat did say that we played as a team, and he said that at Exeter the guys were out of position. So he was kind of implying that the system is there, and against Exeter they didn't do it, and they got sort of sucked into being individuals, and against Sale they played as a team. Now he would probably argue, that's the plan, and it was their fault. I think you could argue that it's down to selection, so therefore it does go back on his head a little bit. I think you've made a really good point, is that was a team that plays the system better than perhaps the team who was playing on the Exeter game. Now, I think, maybe, and this is speculation, we've always talked about the fact that your key players are halfbacks in any team, and I think, with the best will in the world, AJ coming back, I wonder whether he was that little difference, and also maybe Jimmy Williams as well, because Jimmy Williams is a streetwise rugby player. He's played in the Championship where you can't just let fancy dans in the Championship. There's no individuals. You've got a players team, and I just think those two maybe just marshalled things just a little bit better.
Well, I'd go as far as asking the question, why was Jimmy Williams dropped after Miles has said that Leicester game? Because he was fantastic, and the only thing that we've collectively talked about off record was the rushed kick, wasn't it? Yeah. The week after, where he missed
the kick at Sandy Park, so we didn't get a losing bonus. And you're right.
Put on the naughty step.
You wonder whether he'd been on the naughty step. We'd also then signed Vakatawa, who started to show. Is it argument to say that we probably gave Big Rimy maybe 1 or 2 games too many? should have rotated him a little bit earlier.
Well, to be fair, Miles did call that. He did say he was looking a bit lethargic, and
but then he scored scored that out of the worldie at Newcastle, didn't it? But then it was only Newcastle.
Well, only.
Difficult, isn't it?
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think you've both hit on good points there. I mean, for me, the biggest thing was the hunger and the execution. That was the two things for me, and I think without the hunger and the desire, you won't get that performance anyway. And that was the biggest difference that I could see watching that game as opposed to the week previous.
And actually, I think that was exemplified in another player who we haven't mentioned, who doesn't get a massively good press from us, and that's Kyle Sinclair. I thought Kyle looked like a hungry player.
Yeah, but can I just say, and I'm going to stick my neck out now.
Stick it out, mate. Stick it out. Get ready for the chop.
It's just funny, right? It's just funny to me. Sinclair's playing some of the best rugby for a long, long time, and he's playing for a new contract, possibly in France.
That is
so the cynic in me is not having any of that.
You know what? I think you're right. You very well could have that, but I think if that means he's going to play well for us for this whatever time he's got left.
We'll
and actually, I saw him interviewed the other day on something, and I thought he spoke quite well. I can't remember what it was. It might have been
French TV?
Rugby Week. It was Canal Plus. Yes, nice one, Miles. And also, we have bemoaned about in the past those little signing sessions at the club. We didn't think Sinks looked like he was that interested, but if I'm right in saying that one down at the College Green, he was right in the thick of it as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think maybe. I mean, Sinks. We know Sinks is has his demons maybe, or has struggled. And struggles with his emotions, and in a good way. And maybe he's just come to be positive. He's come to kind of terms with himself, terms with where he is in life, terms with his position as a rugby player. And I'd like to think, regardless of whether there's a cynical edge to it, that we'll get the best out of him. Maybe the end, and that it can only be a good thing for everyone.
Okay, but I still don't think we got the money's worth. But there we go. Let's move on.
I thought Friday the front rows were struggling. There were quite a lot. It's Bristol penalties given against.
We did give away a lot of penalties.
A lot of penalties against. You could argue, it's a sort of penalty which is annoying for fans, isn't it? A lot given against Maxwell Heath, wasn't they? Hinging at the hips. I mean, maybe it's his new Vespa-like sort of headgear that he's wearing. It's that he's slipping out. But that was disappointing, and I was going into the second half a little bit worried about our front three, but they've stabilised eventually.
They did all right, and I think our bench, did a good job. And young Joe Irwin came on, didn't he?
Absolutely. That was great.
Thoroughbred.
Do you know what? I think this is a boy for the future.
Definitely.
And his dad's definitely a Spurs fan as well, because I followed him on.
Actually, talking about that, did you see somebody had put something on Twitter about you saying,
"No,
Bristol Bears, Bristol City, Tottenham. Can you not decide which club you want to follow?"
Okay.
It was one of our regulars. I can't remember who it was.
I genuinely didn't see that.
It was quite funny. Whoever it was, you'll have to get back in touch and remind us.
Right.
But someone had a little.
Okay, so I'll clear this up right now. Okay,
clear it up.
And they should be having a pop at you as well.
Well, exactly.
Southampton
Bristol, whatever. Yeah.
So the Tottenham thing is a family thing. Bristol City is a family thing. My mum's side from Bristol, my dad's side from Tottenham, and obviously Bears is rugby.
Yeah.
But where I differ to you, I've got a little Torquay United in there as well, because we used to go there on holiday. So it was one of those grounds I went to when I was a kid.
That's
and American football, obviously New York Jets, because East Coast rules.
Which part of New York did you grow up in?
Well, it's not where I grew up, but
you got a postcard from there once.
I feel an affinity because I do love New York.
Okay.
Actually, to be fair, I did once go through Buffalo on a coach.
Oh, yeah.
Bills
so
fan,
I'm a big Buffalo Bills fan. Yeah, and actually,
you don't even know any of the rules, mate.
I don't. I mean, come on. Why do you need America? Anyway, we've had this. We don't. No, let's move on. So anyway, I'm glad we cleared that up in the middle of our analysis of the.
I'm going to find out who it was.
You've got to look it up. Somebody did say, "Come on, Lee, sort yourself out. Which team do you support?" Anyway, I mean, what else? Is there anything else to say? I mean, it was, I think a lot has been said by our fans. Stoner's given us a good summary. I think we've highlighted, players that played well. I think we definitely played as a team. I think the interesting thing, actually, I was going to add, was that there was quite a long interview with before the game on TNT with Pat Sanderson and Pat Lamb. Alex Sanderson, sorry, Pat's his brother. The DRRs and Flatman and Healy.
Oh, Pat Lamb's Alex Sanderson.
Brother, yeah. Well, the funny thing was, Alex Sanderson said, look, Pat Lamb looks a lot better than him and he's older. So, but no, the point was that they actually had a really nice chat. And it struck me that you had Pat Lamb, Alex Sanderson, Flatman, Healy, and between them, they'd all played against each other at some points of their career. And actually, I'd kind of forgotten that Pat knows a lot of them from playing. He's not just this big DOR that's come in, big contract, whatever. Yeah. He actually has done his tour of duty in the Premiership, and of course we know that. And they were talking a little bit about how they respected each other as players. Alexander said he always looked up to Pat as a player, as a back rower, dynamic. And he's always looked up to him as a coach as well. And then Pat was like a loving. It was a bit embarrassing, actually. I mean, Healy popped in and said, I've just booked you a room at the Manchester Hilton. And then Flatman popped in and said, I tried to punch you, Alex, once, and I hit you, but then I came out with my hand and you just laughed at me and I had a bandage. So they had a bit of bandage. Anyway, the point was, Pat then was asked, they brought up this stat that Harry Randall and Gus Waugh have got exactly the same stats in terms of kicks and passes. And the point was made is that you both have quite different philosophies or styles, but you basically kick as much. And why is that? And Alexander said, well, we play a power game, and to be honest, because we play a power game, we kick to give our forwards a bit of a rest.
Yeah.
And then Pat said, well, the reason the reason we've got a kicking game is because 3 years ago it was the way the game started going, and we realised we had to follow it. And he said there was just too much jeopardy in the midfield. So in other words, I think he realised it was too risky to do that running from the... Because they always say running from the 22, you're drawing men, that always means you're creating space somewhere else. But you had to make sure you didn't lose the ball. And he said, I guess what he was saying is that, defences had basically worked us out. That's what it was. So he knew that... And of course, I suppose in hindsight, you're not going to become good at the kicking game straight away. But obviously... So anyway, he was saying, we always felt like we had to get involved. Yeah. But he said, ultimately, I don't want to. I want to play good rugby. Yeah. So they then he said, I've been thinking about this quite a lot. Pat said, I've been mulling over a rule change for this. And then before they asked him, they asked Alex Sanderson. He said rolling subs, would mean that I could keep my forwards. Maybe then we would pass it a bit more because there'd be more running. And then Pat said that his rule change was that if the ball gets kicked into your half and you catch it, you can call a mark. You can call a mark. Anywhere between your halfway and your 22. So the mark is extended beyond the 22. Yeah. But if you call a mark, you've got 5 seconds to either run or pass it to somebody who can then kick it, but you're not allowed to kick it back. Okay. The idea being you're encouraging the counter-attack. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was quite an interesting idea. I think it was... I'm sure the trouble is that there'll be a loophole somewhere that someone will exploit, because we saw that terrible Bath Gloucester game on Sunday.
That was ridiculous.
And this ridiculous thing that a forward can just stand where they are, and as soon as someone tries to counter-attack those 5 yards, they're in the game and they suddenly got a chance. So it was interesting, but I think what I'm trying to say is we have kind of said Pat's a little bit like rigid on the game plan and we're not good enough. And actually, maybe he's kind of... we've got to give him some credit that it's not quite as easy to kind of do these things as we think sometimes. And he is a thinker. He's been talking about it, doing it on the training ground. But that still doesn't excuse what happened at Exeter, does it? That was still
and I think that is, a really good point to raise, actually, Pete, because none of us want to see that kicking nonsense, do we? No. And if anything that we can do to change those rules slightly would benefit the game.
Yeah, and I think what Mark Johnson said earlier as well, I mean, if you could somehow move the offside line back a little bit so it was... There's daylight between the back foot. Even then they'll start pushing that, but at least if they're pushing it further back, you've still got space because... it's almost like, okay, maybe they're not offside, but because they're so athletic now, it's too easy for them to rush it. It's
too easy for teams like Chiefs, to be right on the edge of things. And it's a great point. Yeah.
Well, boys, I think we've done that. I think we've baked up, cooked and eaten that humble pie pretty well, but we've also said that, we don't want to do this again. So we don't want to do any more humble pie.
Wow.
And the only way we're not going to do any humble pie is for us not to ever have to complain about another game in the future. So
Absolutely.
One little caveat on the
another
performance.
caveat.
Not particularly, really. Well, I can that.
Should we have an aside?
An aside? No, I'm just thinking that we did say that the subs came on and played brilliantly and made a massive difference. But I think there's a few fans on social media, and I think me included, the fact that we didn't see some of our backs come on that we felt maybe could have got our 5 points. We were beyond the 7-point try ahead with about 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, they've gone down to 13.
They've gone down to 13 men.
That is a great
And I think the point was, I said to the Duchess, where's Ravuvu coming on?
Yeah.
Who else was left out on the bench?
Vacatal was on the bench, wasn't he?
No, I can't remember.
I don't think got a minute. But it would have been,
But Ravuvu, definitely.
I feel like this chap's been brought in from Fiji.
Yeah.
He's been given minutes here and there,
And he's looked good when he's come
He
on.
would have had fresh legs. It might have got us that 5 points, and I was a little bit critical of that point. The game was pretty much showing up, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we could have used him better. So
For those football fans out there, the worry is a little bit of Gareth Southgate in.
A tiny bit.
Yeah. Well, no, Miles.
Anyway,
that's
so
really,
maybe we'll hope to see him a lot more minutes in future matches.
I mean,
we certainly haven't seen his potential yet, have we? 'Cause
No, that's a really good point. Which leads us on nicely to our next game. And of course,
we did have Rich Lane on the bench.
No, we had Rich Lane, who we know is an operator.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think it's a really good point to finish on. But that moves us nicely on to the next game.
Yes.
They come thick and fast. We're
Bulls.
back into Europe, and we are entertaining the Bulls.
A European side. I mean,
having said that, we do like a South African team. We have beaten a nation already. Haven't we?
Yeah,
we beat them last year.
I don't know why they keep coming back.
I don't know why they're coming back. I think it bodes well for us.
not for a sellout crowd this weekend.
But obviously, I don't know about you boys. I don't really follow the URC that much. It's hard enough just following what we do.
Indeed.
Obviously aware that the South African teams were brought into it a couple of years ago, not without controversy. And of course, I've kind of heard of the South African teams and so on, but you know what? I thought, boys, it's time to get another expert in. A proper expert. So I took a bit of a gamble actually on Twitter. That I follow some guy called A-P Rugby. He seems to know what he's talking about. He was clearly a South African fan. Mm-hmm. So I contacted him and asked him if he would be willing to do a little pre-recorded chat to help us kind of preview it. And he agreed. He was a really nice guy. He was called A-P Cronje. He is London-based, but South African-born. He happened by chance to also be a massive Bulls fan as well. Mm-hmm. So he gave me a very, very informative, and I've almost got to say, boys, educational recording about the Bulls, and I think we could listen to that now. Okay, so I'm really, really happy to be joined by AP, who is South African-born, London-based. He is a Bulls fan, and he has now been promoted to our resident South African expert. So, AP, really, really pleased to have you on. Thanks very much for giving up your time as we kind of preview the upcoming Bristol versus Bulls game. But before we talk about that, I thought it'd be really nice if you could just give our listeners a little bit of a general overview about the Bulls, right down to the basics, where they're from, what their history is, and perhaps, I think we were talking off air before, but there's a bit of a parallel with the way that Bristol Bears have developed as well.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on, Pete. Really, really pleased to be here and to get a chance to chat to you guys. But yeah, jumping straight into it, just to give you sort of a general background on the Bulls and where they're from. So for those that don't know, the Bulls are one of what could be described as South Africa's 4 major teams, along with the Lions, the Stormers and the Sharks. They are based in Pretoria, which is the capital of South Africa. And they have a very long and storied and pretty proud history, albeit, of course, I'd say that being a Bulls fan. But they're sort of seen alongside the Stormers as being the 2 premier South African domestic rugby sides. And probably that trend continues until today, where they are the best 2, really. To sort of touch upon what you mentioned with regards to the parallels that they might have with Bristol, I think, as we were saying, we were speaking off air about actually the Jake White, Pat Lam parallel, because I think what's quite interesting is when you talk to fan bases from both sides at the moment, it's the feeling of we've brought in this sort of almost maverick coach who's got these brilliant ideas and is trying to lead an attacking revolution in the way that the team plays. And that's been very effective for the first 2-3 seasons. But now teams have almost started to work it out, and the fan base is a little bit unhappy in terms of how both sides are performing. The Bulls are sort of mid-table in the URC at the moment. Bristol obviously not performing as well this year in the Prem. So there's a lot hinging on this game in many ways for both sets of fan bases, which I think makes it quite a spicy encounter outside of obviously the occasion.
Yeah, you mentioned the URC. What I understand they did quite well early on. When did they join? I actually don't know when the URC actually was created, but when did the Bulls actually join the URC, and what's their record generally been since then?
So the URC is pretty much still in its infancy. I should say that the Bulls will be very proud to say that they are the only South African team to have won Super Rugby. They won Super Rugby 3 times, and in their heyday, 2007 to 2010, they won it 3 times, including back-to-back 2009 and 2010. And that was the era of, Victor Matfield, Fourie de Pree, Baki Spuerta, basically all the core mainstays of the Springbok team from that era were all Bulls players. Then they went into the wilderness for about 10 years. And although they had a series of very impressive rosters, you think of your Andre Pollards and, Jesse Creel played for them and the host of other players, they just never recaptured that success. Cycled through coaches every 2 seasons, could never really hit the heights of what their roster demanded. Then Jake White came in, and that sort of coincided the year or 2 before the URC. The URC started 2 seasons ago, it's now into its 3rd season currently. And in that first season, somewhat against expectations, they made it to the final. It was an all South African final, and then lost to their big rivals, the Stormers, in the final, which was a fairly closely contested game in Cape Town. So I'd say that, as I said, I mentioned it before, the Bulls are a very proud team, and they'll look at that period of 2010 to about 2020 as a pretty black decade in terms of a dearth of trophies, pretty uncompetitive, struggling for an identity. And they've started to hit their straps. And I think their first season, they probably overperformed expectations. First season URC, so 21, 22. Then 22, 23, I think it was that typical second season syndrome where they sort of dropped off and never hit those heights again. And then after that, I think, we as a side, or the coaches, sat down and made a few alterations, brought in a heck of a lot of players and, coaching personnel as well. And so we're starting to see the fruits of that in this later season, but they're not quite there yet.
Well, that's really interesting, actually. We do like to add a bit of education on our podcast, so I think a bit of modern history goes down well. Thinking about this season, how have they been getting on? I believe the last game they played was the 23rd of December, so they've had a bit of a break since then. But how have they got on in the URC so far, and also how do they get on in their 2 Champions Cup games?
Well, I think what's interesting for the Bulls is that they've managed to make Loftus, which is their home stadium in Pretoria, an absolute fortress. I think they're unbeaten at home this season, and they faced some pretty serious sides, including a stacked Saracen side that came over and were pretty much played off the park for, I'd say, about 60 minutes in that game. I think the scoreline flatters Sarries, how that one finished. So what they've done well in the URC this season is they've won all their home games and done so very, very convincingly. They currently have the highest points difference in the league. So at home, they've been absolutely brutal. Where they've struggled is on the road. They struggle in their opening sort of salvo in the URC. They go on a 4-week tour. I think they managed to win 2 games, which was actually a fairly decent return, but and the other 2 weren't very competitive. And then obviously in their away game to Lyon in the Champions Cup, they unfortunately went down by 1 point there as well. So on the whole, they don't tend to travel very well and historically haven't. This season, it's slightly bucked the trend, but not to the extent where I'd say they'd be going into the Bristol game brimming with confidence.
So, that leads us on nicely to think about the game next Saturday. It's going to be interesting because it's a 3:00 kickoff at Ashton Gate, and I'm not sure there'll be a huge crowd there for various reasons because they're giving away buy one get one free tickets and stuff like that at the moment for season ticket holders. So it could be interesting, and it is a really nice stadium. And we always have a suspicion that it's quite good for teams to play well at because it's quite comfortable. So thinking about that, I mean, what sort of team do you think us Bristol Bears fans are likely to see? And are there any? I mean, what names will we have heard of, or and likewise, are there any kind of unheralded players that we should be more wary of, perhaps?
So this is the $1 million question, and I have to be honest with you, it's been very, very difficult to predict what Bulls team would come out this season. Everyone sort of expected them to send a completely second-string side to Lyon, and then they didn't. Or rather, players that people assumed were second-string players were then selected for their, grudge match against the Stormers, where they very much went, all guns blazing. So it's very tricky to sort of speculate about exactly what type of team's going to go out. But broadly speaking, I suppose it might be worth giving people an idea of the types of names you might have heard and who do play for the Bulls. So, I mean, people would have heard of Willie LaRue. He's now a Bulls player as of this season. Kurtley Aronson, Caden Moody, two of the rising stars in South Africa in the back three on the wing. They are Bulls players, and I wouldn't be surprised if both or at least one of them were involved. Then thinking some other names, I suppose Premiership viewers would be familiar with. Wilco Low, who played for Harlequins. He's now at the Bulls, as is Ocker van der Merwe, brother of Duan, who played for Sale at hooker.
Well, yeah, we know him.
So they've really they've really reinforced their side with a few signings on the, as I said, after last season. That's where you had Akker, Wilco, Willie LaRue, these types of guys come in. Johan Goosen may be familiar to some Premiership viewers who he was at Montpellier for a very long period of time. So trying to guess what we're likely to see in terms of this weekend coming, as I said, it's a bit of a fool's errand to try and preempt. But what I suspect we will see is there's some very important players for the Bulls who are lacking match time because they've been injured and were due to come back around about that Stormers game on the 23rd of December. So will very much now be fit and probably raring to go. So that includes Captain Ron Nokia, who is very much touted as a future, multi-capped Springbok. He's incredibly talented lock second rower. So he's a guy I'd very much say is one to look out for. Massive engine on him. And then in the back row, you've got a guy like Cameron Anakom, who sort of caught the headlines a lot. I know that Bristol, given its proximity to Wales, that you probably get quite a lot of influx of Welsh fans. And he's one that is obviously Welsh qualified as well. So for the Welsh Bristol Bears fans, that might be one of particular interest. And then, just more broadly, I think the Bulls' backline is perhaps slightly unheralded, but it's a very exciting backline. At 9, you're almost likely to see probably Zach Berg or Keegan Ioannis. I could sort of spend all day sort of speculating with names. I think more helpful perhaps is just to give you an idea of the type of rugby the Bulls play.
Well, I was going to say, do they have one sort of game plan, or are they quite adaptable? So.
Well, I think this sort of touches on what I said previously when, in their heyday, 07 to 2010, a team that has, Bakkies Buerta in is going to play a particular style of rugby. And they were sort of known as the bully boy team in South Africa, heavily forward dominant, just lots and lots of pick and goes, rolling mauls, set piece orientated, strong kicking game. Fourie du Preez as the sort of general commanding it, Mornay Steyn as well. So you can imagine that type of style. In the Jake White era, they've completely inverted that, I'd say, and they've now become much more attacking focused. And that's why I think there's parallels there with the type of rugby that Bristol try and play, an offloading game, keep ball, hence why they've scored so many tries, hence why they've currently got the highest points difference in the league. So I think, what you're likely to see is a team that plays with a lot of ambition in all conditions. I mean, the game against Lyon that we alluded to, they scored some absolutely stunning tries in that game and were willing to attack from within their 22 regularly. And it was pretty torrid conditions. It was freezing. It was hammering it down. So come what may, and hopefully it stays dry for the weekend. But I think that they won't be deterred by the conditions. And I mean, you mentioned that it's a gorgeous place to go play at Ashton Gate as well. So we could be in for some fireworks.
Yeah, and we're going to go into the game with a little bit of confidence after our gritty win at Sale. So it sounds great. I mean, that is a fantastic summary for us. I mean, as I said, it's the first time we played a South African club side in a competition. So I really appreciate that, and hopefully it's going to be a really good game. If both teams turn up, it sounds like there could be a few metaphorical, and if we're lucky, literal fireworks at Ashton Gate on Saturday. Well, look, I really appreciate you giving up your time. It's been great. You now have been promoted to our regular South African expert. So if we need to talk to you again, I hope you'd be willing to come on and chat to us if we play another South African side in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been brilliant chatting.
Well, there you go. I mean, it didn't sound very South African, but I think he got a bit more South African. But as he did point out to me that he was born in South Africa and moved over to London when he was a kind of teenager. He works in the city now, but he's a big Bulls fan. Yeah. He's a fan of rugby, and he spoke very well, boys. And not only did he give us quite a lot of info about the Bulls, their history, but he also gave us a bit of geography.
He did, which you always love.
Which I love, and he mentioned the word capital city, or the phrase capital city, which I love. And also he kind of made that connection, which I had no idea about, is the fact that the Bulls have kind of rebranded a little bit like Bristol Bears did, and Pat Lam is very much in the mould of Jake White, or Jake White is in the mould of Pat Lam. And in many ways, his implication was that they are going to come and play rugby.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily travel, although they did only lose to Lyon by 1 point. They also haven't played since the 23rd of December. So, and they're riding, reasonably high in the pool. I think they beat Saracens quite heavily.
Yeah.
They lost to Lyon away. They're coming to Bristol. I mean, I do wonder whether the weather's going to play it, because
let's hope so.
I mean, if
30 degrees in Pretoria, maybe.
Yeah,
one in Bristol.
We've got this cold snap, and I'm thinking we need this cold snap to last a little bit longer.
This cold snap is our kind of altitude.
Yeah, I mean they play.
Absolutely.
That's what he said. They've got like an unbeaten home record because they play at Loftus Versfeld. It's an altitude place.
Yeah.
A bit like the Bolivian football team never lose.
Yeah,
they
never lose at home.
They never lose at home because they're so high. So the way he talks, I don't know about you boys. I mean, we felt as though the Champions Cup is a bit of a shot to nothing.
Yeah,
we know we shouldn't really be in it. We played well against Lyon, albeit nearly lost it. We sent a good side, young side, out to Bordeaux, acquitted themselves well. We know we've got the kind of Joe Joyce derby coming up at Connacht away.
Yeah.
I feel, I don't know about you.
We did beat Lyon.
Yeah, we did beat Lyon, but we almost lost.
We almost lost.
What I'm saying is we kind of nearly threw it away. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I'm going. I'm taking. The club have done a buy one get one free on a season ticket, which slightly annoys me because that's like devaluing our season ticket.
Can't be Miles's +1.
It's too late now.
Duchess is coming.
It's a Duchess, and I've given it to my missus is coming, and my kids.
I'll have to.
There's plenty of season tickets, so we'll have free tickets.
I'll have to tap up TC.
That, they're saying that 16,000 already sold, and I'm sure that they take into account season tickets. So I was a bit negative. I thought there wouldn't be that many people, but it does sound like there's going to be a few people there. I don't know about you boys, but I feel like this is something I'm not too worried. I'm just going to go and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it was going to be a really entertaining game because I think they will come and play, and I think we will play, and I think if you've got two teams with attacking ambitions, I think it's going to bode well. I think
you're right. I mean, I listened to the interview with this morning on the way to work, and got to work slightly a little bit more worried about the team they might send. Really, I mean, I did watch the Lyon Bulls game, and I think, as suggested, there was some second string team, and they came 1 point from winning.
Yeah.
There's some quality operators. Their number 10 was phenomenal, and I think they're not going to hold back really on sending probably a very strong team here. And they've got the likes of Willie LaRue and the guys as suggested. It's going to be a tough gig. They're going to be, I think, a quality side. They were, from what I saw against Lyon, a really good running side, very attacking, and a huge Saffers. So we can't hold back on sending sending out on Saturday a weakened team. We've got to aim to get the home win, haven't we? To have any chance of progressing in this pool.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, there is a kind of it's the home game after that extra home game. I think there's going to be some sort of subconscious or conscious pressure for us to put on a bit of a show.
Yeah,
and I think it's a shot to nothing. I think if we win gloriously, it'd be great. If we lose gloriously,
it'll still be great.
It'll still be great.
Yeah.
and I think we give it a go. And I think the likes of, Jancy van Rensburg, Bernard's going to be looking forward to it because he's going to have some mullet brothers in arms, isn't he? He's going to he's probably feeling a little bit out of it. They're trying to help him a little bit with his Barnet, but no one's getting close to his sort of mullet.
Oh, no.
And I think the likes of Jimmy Williams. This is the sort of game you want to throw some people like Joe Owen again. Give some of the championship players like Jimmy Williams. Give them the chance to play against
Revuvu.
Stick him in there.
Stick him in.
Noah Heward. I think he had half a game. He didn't do much in the second half. He's a quality. I just think I'm looking forward to this. It's a Saturday afternoon. I know it's not great for everyone because there's people that play rugby, but I think it's going to be a great day down the gate. I don't know whether they have the old Safa barbecues on, the old braise on there again.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
Oh.
We'll see, but we'll find out. So I don't think.
No half and half scarves, Mark. No, we don't want any of that, do we?
I might even pop down.
You could just come out and get in on the door.
Yeah.
Why not?
I might see Coochie and see if I can get in.
Yeah, go on. When do you? Or someone out there might even have their coupon for
free ticket. They can give you.
Yeah, because I'm working
to you
because we forgot about you.
Thanks. I'm working in the morning, so I think I've got a free. Free for the afternoon.
Well, look, boys, I don't think there's much more we say about this. There's no point speculating on the team. We just want a good team, whoever it is, to go out, play well, and give us something to cheer about.
Exactly.
Okay, so I don't want to. Let's go on because we want to try and keep this under the hour. There are a couple of other things on the agenda. First things first. We talked about a signing last week, Big Bill Matter.
We did.
It's been a bit of chit chat over. Some people think it's good. Some people think it might be we're buying someone over the hill. I think time will tell.
Yeah.
But
wait a minute. We did say though last week. Yeah. We weren't knocking the signing.
No.
We were only just suggesting that maybe it was a shortest view, a shortism view, short term.
And actually, our friend Mark Johnson, who said the offside line,
he got right on our case.
He came on our case and said, "I saw him in the quarter final against England in the World Cup, and he was a unit." And I was like, "Okay,
we weren't denying that, were we? We were just suggesting that." Maybe
32 years old.
32.
But then he came back again.
He did.
And he did say, that's the best
big
32.
Contract, and if it's progressing...
We'd all been going on about it.
Yeah.
And actually, an Edinburgh fan also came on and
said...
they're gutted he's going. But just before we recorded tonight, another signing came up. And it turns out to be the younger brother of Santiago Grondona, who unfortunately had the ACL. It's Benjamin.
Yes.
I'm not sure Benjamin is a really... good rugby name, but it is what it is. Apparently, I didn't know anything about him. He's an Argentinian under 20. He looks like a unit. He looks like he's the Luke Littler of rugby. He's 19 but looks about 30.
Less KFC,
but a bit more ripped.
Potential though, and this is what we were talking about last week.
Yes,
about signing players for the future.
Exactly,
and I think this is one that actually, with the eye to the future, but someone who could potentially come in the not too distant future, I think as well.
He's under 20s at the moment, isn't he? So you're right, this has got longevity, this signing, hasn't it? I think it's great.
Yeah, I think I'm now starting to think, because contracts are up, COVID contracts are up, maybe we're setting up for a bit of a change of guard after next season.
We've not really mentioned any of the contracts.
We did wonder, like Matters coming in, we wondered who was going out, and now we've got another back row who can play on the flank.
I mean, there's two things.
More questions to be asked.
I think probably it means Big Stevie, Captain Fantastic, may well be at the end of his term, which will be
what a servant, what a legend.
And I also think it's just there's such a high attrition rate in the back row in terms of injuries. It's such a hard position that maybe we're just bulking up for the. I mean, just start thinking about it. The two Grondona brothers playing in the back row, Big Bill Matter, Fitzharding. You get excited. James Dunn, back in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it also, we haven't mentioned this, but it kind of also suggests that's, which we suspect, but that is curtains for Chris Bowie as well. We haven't heard anything. I think we now just have to assume whatever has happened, he is a goner out of the club, which is a real shame. And I hope at some point something is said so that we even have a chance to. We are
still speculating, aren't we?
But I mean, boys. I mean, we haven't heard anything.
It does suggest
it's something. Anyway, So 2 signings, it's always good.
Great.
And then a couple of other things before we finish. We should mention the Bears women. They haven't played for a while. I think, unfortunately, they've had a bit of a mixed season. We went to see them against Gloucester Hartbury.
We did, yeah.
They're so good. They named themselves twice. They were out-muscled and didn't quite have the cutting edge. They also lost to Chiefs quite badly, and they also lost to Saracens, which basically are probably the top of the 3 clubs better than them.
It's a derailing, but it's like, Dan Ward said today, hasn't he? Dave Ward, sorry. There's room for improvement.
Yeah.
And also we've got to think, as long as we stay in that top 4 at the end of the season, when we get to the business end, we're
anything,
and anything can happen.
He did the old cliche: no championships are won in December and January.
Absolutely, exactly.
Which I like.
You're right. We'll play those same 3 teams again in a playoffs. Well, not all 3, obviously, and we'll know what to do differently. So you'd hope the games will be a lot closer.
Like we said last week against Saris, the women were doing well up to about 55, 60 minutes.
Better to take your beatings now, and then learn from them. And go on.
And we also mentioned the fact that even though we've got some big international presence in the front 5, we can't underestimate the time it does take time for players to bed in and integrate.
Yeah.
So I think 3 wins out of 6. They're halfway through the season.
Currently, yeah.
I'm hoping. I mean, they got Leicester away this Saturday, who aren't, should be there for the taking. They're still building as a women's team.
Yeah.
And then I think they've got. Another, I can't remember, I was looking at the fixtures. I think they got another winnable one after that. I think they might have Quins actually at Shaftesbury Park on the Saturday after Connacht, which we might go to, Miles. You reckon? Saturday afternoon, Shaftesbury Park? We've been there. Anyway, so the point is, I think if they can get 2 good wins under the belt, get a bit of confidence going, and then when they come up against the Chiefs and so forth, we may see some end of season. As you said, the business end is when it all matters. And then finally, boys, we've got one last thing. We've kind of been promoting this a little bit on social medias, but we have been nominated as in the 2024 Sports Podcast Awards as one of the 10 shortlist. Not quite sure where does a shortlist become a long list, but anyway, we are one of 10 rugby podcasts that are finalists. That were picked by industry experts, and this was something I told you boys about before Christmas. I did have to submit a whole application form. The good thing is, because we were independent, we didn't pay. Some of the other big boys, like there's ITV World Cup podcast, there's Big Jim Hamilton, Andy Goods, the rugby pod. There's the good, the Scaz and the ugly, the women's one.
It's fair to say we're the underdogs of this, aren't we?
We're the underdogs, we're the underbears.
But we're fighting.
But we're in there fighting. We're punching above our weight, and we've already started putting a few socials out, getting people to vote for us. I mean, I have no idea how the voting system works, because it seems a bit unfair that if you don't have 1 million followers, it's going to be quite difficult to get 1 million votes. But I like to think there is some sort of pro-ratering, but we can only do what we can do. So for those people that haven't voted so far, I mean, all the details will be in the bio of the pod. And please, if you fancy giving us a bit of support, click through. I think you do have to leave your email address, to be fair.
Yeah, there is a bit of faffing around.
I'm sure you can unsubscribe.
You can opt out immediately.
Yeah, you can.
So don't worry.
So we'd really appreciate it. It was just something that was a bit of fun, but now we're in it, boys. We're in it. I want to win it.
To win it. In it to win it.
And we're we're representing Bristol Bears, aren't we?
And let's face it. I mean, since the Challenge Cup, we haven't looked like winning any silverware, have we? Anywhere across the club.
2024 could be the season.
Actually, I think, to be fair, the Ashton Gate gets some sort of green credential cup for being So, but we're part of the wider
community,
the wider family beyond the gate. So what I'm saying, if you haven't done it so far, look at the link in whatever podcast platform you've got, and we'd really appreciate a vote. But on that note, I think let's leave it positive. I think we're just about going to come in under the hour when I add in those bits and bobs. So great chat, boys. I think we're planning to be back to our normal routine Sunday evening. So the pods are coming thick and fast from Bears Beyond the Gate. But hopefully everyone will keep warm in this weather. If you're going to be down the ground on Saturday at the game, if you see us, come and say hello. But otherwise, stay safe and up the Bears.